Welcome back, S1 and S2, and this is your lesson on looking at structure in a novel. So your weekly reminder, structure is how a story is organised, plot refers to the main events that occur in the story, setting is the time and place the story occurs, characters are the people who are affected by events in the story, the narrator is the person who tells the story, and the themes are the big ideas that come from the story. Our learning aims today then is we're going to look at how stories develop. You should be able to identify and comment on different types of narrative structure and understand how the structure of a story can affect its meaning. So, how stories develop. Plot structure is often referred to as an arc, mainly because the structure of a story often rises and falls like the shape of an arc. And the basic narrative arc would follow this. So you have an opening where you introduce the characters and the setting. Development, where you establish the main routines of characters and the setting that they're in. Complication. Now we're about halfway up to the top of the arc. This is when something happens to change this routine, could be good or bad. Crisis. Now we're up at the very top of the arc. This is the point where everything starts to get out of control. And resolution, coming back down again. This is when things become resolved. Things can go back to the way they were, or a new routine can be established. So there's a really simple way to recognise how stories develop and to think about the structure in which that happens. If you have a table called Problems Faced and How These Are Solved. So if we think about the Hunger Games, one of the first problems faced by Katniss is that her sister Prim has been chosen to take part in the Hunger Games, and it's solved by Katniss volunteering to take her sister's place. Then the second problem Katniss has is that she doesn't have any sponsors. But this is solved by her impressing the judges in the private session and getting awarding high points, which help her gain sponsors. The third problem might be when she's in the games and she needs to find water, and so on. Now, sometimes you might find that things are solved in a totally different order. Sometimes you might find that there aren't any problems faced till near the end, or that there's lots of little problems like here and they just keep getting solved and then go back to a new problem again. Narrative structures then. So you've got different types of narrative structure. You've got a chronological one, and that's where the majority of the narrative is told in the order that it occurs, and that's where you follow the narrative arc, as it were. You could have a fractured narrative structure where the story switches between different points in time. A good example that comes to mind is there's a drama called This Is Us, and it goes between the children in the present day and then in the past where it shows them growing up, and then it goes right back to the past where it shows them being born, and it just keeps switching all the time. You could have a circular structure where the story ends where it began. You could have a parallel structure where there are different storylines all happening at the same time. So what I want you to do just now is pause this video and have a class discussion about different novels or films that follow these different structures. There you go. How structure affects meaning then. So different features of structure create different effects. So first of all, how the story opens. So that might raise questions. It might bring big ideas in straight away. It might introduce the main character. It might introduce the main setting. How quickly or slowly the story of a structure develops, that was also known as the pace. Well, that can affect the mood, can affect tension. It could affect, it could help you understand whether there's a part that's quite boring or not. It could affect all different things. The order of events. So that might help you understand which bit is a key event. So if I give you an example, there's a play that we quite often study in S1 called The Terrible Fate of Humpty Dumpty. The very first scene shows Teddy Dumpton's death. Now chronologically, that doesn't happen until the middle of the play where you see it happening again. But it's prioritising that key moment, that key scene, to help you remember that this is a horrific thing that can happen with when bullying gets out of control. And so by putting that scene in at the beginning and then referring to it at the end, and then at the very end again, referring to it in the middle, sorry, and then the very end again, it helps you understand that this is a really crucial moment in the story. Order of events can also influence character development and relationship development. So what I want you to do just now is discuss the opening of your novel and what it does. Discuss the pace of your novel. How slowly or quickly does it develop, and what does that affect? And what about your main character? How do they develop in your novel? So pause the video and do that now. So today's task then. As we've mentioned in previous lessons, you won't be doing it as a group, but you could be doing it as a pair or as a class. You're going to discuss how your story has been developing. Then you're going to use your page in your OneNote called How Stories Develop to track the problems faced and how these are solved. And you might be asked to continue to do this after that as well. And then decide as a class what sort of structure your story is following. And that's the end of today's lesson.